Bulavinaka, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Elisha Foon. Coming up.
Our position very strongly is I've been supportive of the Pacific People's Ministry. I haven't been supportive of the management of it. I think when you have a $40,000 farewell, I think that's insane.
As New Zealand's incoming Prime Minister Chris Luxon forms a new government, Pacific leaders are raising concerns about a drastic drop of Pacific MPs and a lack of representation. Also,
I can smell the curries, I can smell the Fiji-style barbecue. I know there's going to be lots of great entertainment.
Fiji culture flourishes in New Zealand with a celebration to mark the end of Fijian Language Week. And later, head coach of the Flying Fijians' emotional reaction after a loss to England in the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals. New Zealand's election over the weekend has resulted in a change of government, with a national-led coalition to take over from Labour. Pacific leaders fear they will have little to no voice as the new government takes shape. The former Labour government had 11 Pacific MPs, including Carmel Sepuloni, as Deputy Prime Minister. But National only has 2 possible Pacific MPs, which will only be finalised after the special votes are counted. Caleb Fotheringham was at a Pacific community event in Christchurch on election night and filed this report.
At a Pacific election watch party in Island Christchurch, most attendees opted to socialise outside instead of watching the results. Many in the Pacific community are worried about what the drop in representation will mean for them.
I'm excited for change to come, but also nervous to what those changes are.
I was at one point going to vote National, but the thought of a National Act coalition, to me, smacks a bit of racism.
They want the National-led coalition to deliver at a grassroots level.
At a minimum, I'd hope that they would keep the ministries. I feel like I saw something that ACT said that they want to just get rid of at least the Ministry of Pacific People and some others.
I'd love to see New Zealand have more of a role in the infrastructure of islands like Niue, so we don't have to rely on the Chinese to do it.
Education for our young Pacific people, that's one big thing that I want to see.
Just last week, the now incoming Prime Minister Chris Luxon told RNZ Pacific he would not bow to ACT and get rid of the Ministry of Pacific Peoples.
Our position very strongly is I've been supportive of the Pacific People's Ministry. I haven't been supportive of the management of it. I think when you have a $40,000 farewell, I think that's insane.
Despite this, the Deputy Mayor of Waitaki, Hana Halalili, says she is disappointed about the results but is trying to be optimistic.
Labour has usually supported our Pacific people and our well-being, so I can envisage there would be some significant cuts to some of the resourcing and funding that we have been able to receive to support a lot of our social and health outreach.
Pacific community advocate Melissa Lama is also feeling disheartened.
If we look at some of the campaigning slogans and narratives that particularly the right side, National and ACT, have had throughout this election, it doesn't necessarily strength-based hope in what's to come for my future and my children's future. So I'm definitely gutted. I feel a bit low mood today.
On current votes and with special votes still to be counted, Agnes Lohini, who is 25 on the list, has not made the cut. Another one of National's Pacific candidates, Cook Islands lawyer Angie Nichols, is leading the Te Atatu electorate, but only by a very slim margin. Ms. Lama wonders how the new coalition will make decisions for Pacific people.
To me, that's really scary to have one person represent a massive group of New Zealand society who are visible in Aotearoa, which is us Pacific people. I can't get over that.
At the moment, Dr. Shane Reti is the Pacific People's spokesperson. We spoke with him while he was on the campaign trail, and this was his commitment to Pacific peoples.
We know that attending to the cost of living, particularly attending to inflation, is one of the most impactful things we can do.
Tongan community leader Pakila Manasi Lua, who's leading the charge on fighting for justice for ongoing dawn raids, says National and ACT have made themselves clear on overstayers.
They don't support any pathway to residency for people who are overstaying or who may have been stuck here during the lockdowns and had no, other option but to try and find a way to settle.
Pakilau says while there is concern for overstayers, he is still holding out hope the new government will surprise him.
It was under a national government that the worst of the dawn raids occurred in the 70s. But they were also the first to put in an amnesty for overstayers in 1977. And that's how our family got their pathway to residency. It was actually, ironically, during the time of Sir Robert Muldoon.
The final number of Pacific MPs that make it into Parliament will be finalised after special votes are counted by the Electoral Commission by November 3rd. A national-led government has plenty to prove if they're to unite the country and win over the trust of Pacific peoples in the 3 years they're in power.
For more on this, Caleb Fotheringham spoke to Pacific political commentator Thomas Wynn. Despite a drop in Pacific representation, Mr. Wynn was hopeful and says there could still be opportunities for Pasifika so long as the government is held to account.
I feel it's time for us to, especially in the Pacific, to not think about what we're losing, because that day is done. That was yesterday. And really we need to start looking at the opportunity that this new government affords us, because shouting from the sidelines is not going to help us. And I do think that there is opportunity there for us. There are some things that David Seymour and National have said I think we need to hold them to account to, which in the end would be beneficial to Pacific communities.
That's interesting. What type of things would that be?
Well, for example, ACT's narrative is less government and more out to the community, and he's given a couple of really good examples, like charter schools, which is just one example. But if we see what the former Labor government did with COVID and vaccination, when they realised that vaccination numbers for Pacific and Māori were going to adversely affect the whole population coming out of lockdown, they then pivoted out of holding the power and the purse string and gave it to the community. And we saw those numbers rise. I was working in the Labor leader's office when that was happening. So the opportunity that they present us is that we can hold them to account to give the community more of what they need, to resource the community, to get the community to fix what the community needs to be fixed and to strengthen what we need to strengthen. I think that's something we can really hold them to.
In saying all that, do you have any concerns about this new government?
Yeah, I do have concerns. I think the track record for National has been one where they call them the squeezed middle, but you know, for the most part, people below that squeezed middle are our communities, and generally they haven't fared well. And generally speaking, I think the narrative was definitely around attacking beneficiaries, the brown communities, and when I hear comments like good, hard-working Kiwis, I don't know that that has our people in that frame, and that's the bit that concerns me. So we now have to raise that, I think, and highlight that, because what's good for us is good for them also. If you want less Pacific and Māori people on the benefit and doing all those other things that they are saying we shouldn't be doing, then help us to do that by giving us the resources to get ourselves out of that situation, because nobody knows that better than we do. And Chris Luxon has said that over and over and over again. Again, we sort of circle back, we need to hold him to account to that. I am concerned, but you know, my concern is measured with the opportunity as well, because I can't be focused on what we are losing as opposed to what we could potentially gain out of this relationship and move forward. I was delighted somewhat in Chris Luxon's speech last night. I think he's got a big task ahead of him. However, my takeaway from his speech was, you know, that we all need to get together and move forward. And I do think that that's what we need to do.
Community pride of Fijian culture has been showcased at the annual Fiji Day Festival in New Zealand over the weekend. Hundreds of Fijians who call Aotearoa home gathered to celebrate their country's 53rd Independence Day to end Fijian Language Week. Tiana Haxton attended the event in South Auckland.
A slice of home away from home. Hundreds of Fijians gathered at an event in Auckland on Saturday to celebrate their heritage for Fiji Day. Mangere Centre Park was filled with the tantalising scent of local delicacies, sounds of traditional singing, and the sights of a range of handmade arts and crafts, cultural performances, and more. It's the 8th time Fiji Day has been officially marked in New Zealand, and event coordinator Greg Trail says it's only getting bigger and better.
There's a lot of Fijians turning out, and the sun's out today, which is a blessing. So we're looking forward to a great day and more people to come down and enjoy us.
He says it is very important for youth to connect with their heritage and see it flourish.
The Fijian cultural ceremony going on in the background, that's part of our Fijian Language Week for our kids to know their culture. I believe we're the only Fiji Day outside of Fiji that does it, and we're bigger, and I think it's really awesome to see the display of culture that's going on at the moment, and New Zealand-born kids to preserve and sustain our language.
Fiji Day also improves the mental health of the community living in Aotearoa. Koronuasi Tui Whangalele is the Service Clinical Director for Foloto Fale, a Pacifica mental health service. He says these gatherings help reassure and boost morale amongst dispersed Fijians that may not have other opportunities to connect with their culture and community.
This is huge for the well-being, particularly for Fijians. I think this is, or for Itauke Fijians, this is a huge event because I guess for some of us we don't see each other as often as we would do back in the islands, but I think for now just being able to look at somebody that you haven't seen for 12 months, that gives us hope that we're still alive, and it helps with our well-being.
There are close to 20,000 Fijians in Aotearoa, with over half the population residing in Auckland. The Fijian government acknowledged the importance of connecting to these members, sending its Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Lenora Ngering Tamboa, to attend the event.
What I really appreciate about New Zealand is its inclusivity, celebrating the languages of the Pacifica communities that have made Aotearoa their home. It's just wonderful to see so many of our diaspora come together. You know, I can smell the curries, I can smell the Fiji-style barbecue. I know there's going to be lots of great entertainment, but more importantly, just unifying our diaspora.
Fiji Day was filled with a sea of smiles and a deep sense of pride and belonging for the Fijian community within Aotearoa, New Zealand.
And if you'd like to see more coverage of the Fiji Day celebrations, head over to rnzi.com for a visual story. It was a hard-fought battle for the Flying Fijians who put their heart and soul into the Rugby World Cup quarterfinal against England. Head coach Simon Raiwalui told Sky Sport it was an emotional moment after his team's close match, losing to England 30-24. He says after 15 weeks of hard work, he could not be prouder of the team and was thankful to all Fijian supporters.
I couldn't be prouder of the boys. We've worked so hard from week one, 15 weeks now. We've showed where we belong on the world stage. And so the whole group, 33 players, 52 in total with the staff. It's a bit of an emotional moment at the moment.
Meanwhile, England skipper Owen Farrell says Fiji were a force to be reckoned with.
It was a controlled performance at times. There's plenty that we can still do better. There's plenty that we can still clean up. But you see the power of the Fijian team at times. Today, they went to man down and they still managed to go through us at one point. Credit to them. This is a tough battle.
RNZ Pacific senior sports journalist Ilie Satora was at the nail-biting game in Marseille and spoke with Koroi Hawkins shortly after the match.
It was, a game that I think all Fijians who were here in France were excited about getting into the quarterfinal after 16 years. England started well. Fiji, made some basic errors in the first half, and they paid for it because Farrell was on point with his kicking, and the last 10 minutes there. Fiji was still in it. They could have clinched the game in the end, but they were just not able to put those passes together. And of course, England defending really tight and really well right up to the end of the game.
Let's talk about the kicking. Like how much of a letdown was that for Fiji?
Yeah, I think coming into the Rugby World Cup, there were questions being asked on why Ben Volavola was not not included. Simon Rawalui had his reasons. He had Tetitela and Caleb Mans, who got injured. They were geared up to take the team through the World Cup. And then today, Owen Farrell showed why it is critical to have a good kicker. Fiji had chances to get some points on the board from the penalty spot, but missed those chances, and that paid dearly in the end. Farrell was on spot with his kicking, not just for points, but his place kicks to gain territory, his chips to get the chips through to get the players running, and that was, I think, a critical part that Fiji was lacking in.
We've just seen the end of the last quarterfinal match not too long ago. All of the semis set up now. Looking to those semis, what are your thoughts on those matchups?
Well, Argentina was the surprise. They took Wales to pieces in the first quarterfinal and came through. The All Blacks showed that they are in the running and to be reckoned with. Lining up that semi-final, Argentina and the All Blacks, that will be an interesting one. Of course, both teams know each other very well, having played in the championship, over the years, and the Springboks, coming back to win that game by 1 point over France. What a thrilling game that was, and lining up that semi-final with England should be two very good competitive semi-finals coming up, just like what we saw in the 4 quarterfinals.
And your call? What's your call for the result?
I'm going All Blacks and Springboks appearing in the final.
Naka Eliasa, thank you so much for all your coverage across the Pacific World Cup campaigns. Safe travels home.
Naka Modemanda from Marseille.
That wraps up Pacific Waves for today. I'm Alicia Foon, who'll be with you this week in Fasana. To listen back, head over to rnz.com/programs. We're also on Apple, Spotify and iHeartRadio podcasts. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā soi fua.